The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beyond the perimeter fence of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, its waves catching the first light of dawn as Commander Amara Washington approached the main gate on foot. She'd parked her rental car 3 blocks away deliberately, wanting to walk the perimeter, to feel the base before tomorrow's ceremony would transform her into its most visible authority figure. The athletic shorts and faded navy t-shirt she wore were intentional. She'd learned long ago that you saw the truth of a place when people didn't know who you were. The main gate rose before her, a fortress of security protocols and military precision. 2 armed guards stood at attention, their postures perfect, their weapons visible. A third man, older, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades enforcing rules, watched from inside the guardhouse. Master-at-Arms First Class Derek Thornton, according to the name tape on his uniform. His eyes tracked her approach with the kind of assessment that made her skin prickle with familiar warning. If you believe everyone deserves respect, regardless of their uniform or skin color, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to show you that assumptions at a military gate can destroy careers and expose systemic racism that's been hiding in plain sight. She was still 50 feet from the checkpoint when Thornton stepped out of the guardhouse, his hand moving to rest on his sidearm in a gesture that was meant to intimidate. The 2 younger guards, their name tapes read Mitchell and Cooper, shifted their positions, forming a barrier across the pedestrian entrance. "Ma'am, this is a restricted military installation," Thornton called out, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "You can't be here." Amara stopped, keeping her hands visible, her military ID already in her palm. "Good morning. I don't care who you are," Thornton interrupted, closing the distance between them with aggressive strides. "This gate is for authorized personnel only. The beach access is back that way." He jerked his thumb over his shoulder, dismissive, his eyes never quite meeting hers, instead scanning her body, her clothing, her skin, calculating threat levels based on prejudices he probably didn't even recognize in himself. "I understand, Master-at-Arms. I have authorization." Amara held up her military ID card, the holographic seal catching the morning light. "Commander Amara Washington, reporting." "Jesus Christ, another one," Cooper muttered to Mitchell, loud enough to be heard. "Third time this month some civilian tries to walk onto base with a fake ID." Thornton snatched the card from her hand before she could finish her sentence, holding it up to the light with exaggerated scrutiny. His lip curled in something between amusement and contempt. "Commander? Really?" He looked back at his subordinates, sharing the joke. "You people always go big with the fakes, don't you? Never a specialist or a petty officer. Always some high-ranking officer." The casual racism in "you people" hung in the morning air like smoke. Amara felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice level. "That's a legitimate Department of Defense ID card. If you scan it—" "I've been doing this job for 22 years. Thornton cut her off, stepping closer now, invading her personal space in a dominance display that had nothing to do with security protocols and everything to do with showing her she didn't belong. "I can spot a fake from across the street. This?" He waved her ID dismissively. "This is decent quality, I'll give you that. Probably paid good money for it. But there's no way in hell you're a Navy commander." "Why is that?" Amara asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. "Because commanders don't show up at my gate at 600 in gym clothes looking like they're lost," Thornton said, his voice dripping with condescension that barely masked the racial profiling underneath. "Because commanders have drivers, official vehicles, advanced security clearance. They don't just wander up on foot like some civilian who thought it would be fun to explore a military base." Mitchell had pulled out his phone, already typing. "Want me to call the MPs, Master Chief? Get her processed for attempted unauthorized access?" "Not yet," Thornton said, still studying the ID with theatrical skepticism. "Let's see how deep this goes." He turned back to Amara, and now his voice carried a sharper edge. "Where'd you get this? Some website? Friend in the printing business? You know it's a federal crime to impersonate a military officer, right? I'm not impersonating anyone, Amara said, her voice still calm but with steel underneath. I'm Commander Amara Washington. I'm assigned to this base. If you'll just scan the card or call the— Or here's what's really happening, Cooper interrupted, moving to flank her on the left side while Mitchell moved right. They were boxing her in, a tactical maneuver she recognized from her own training. You saw the base from the beach, thought it looked interesting, maybe thought you could get some photos for social media. Happens all the time. Civilians think military bases are tourist attractions. Some people, Mitchell added, his emphasis on people carrying its own weight of meaning, don't understand that this is sovereign government property, that there are rules about who gets to be here. Amara watched them triangulate around her, saw Thornton's hand still resting on his sidearm, saw the way they'd positioned themselves to control her movement. Her 15 years of training screamed at her to respond tactically, but she forced herself to remain still, to de-escalate. Gentlemen, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm expected on this base. I have orders. Orders? Thornton barked out a laugh. Show me these orders. What unit are you supposedly assigned to? SEAL Team 3, Amara said clearly. I'm the incoming— The laughter from all three men cut her off. Mitchell actually doubled over, slapping his knee. Cooper shook his head in disbelief. Thornton's face went red, his amusement turning to anger. SEAL Team? Thornton stepped even closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're telling me that you— Heavy emphasis, loaded with every stereotype and assumption coded into those two words— are assigned to naval special warfare? To the SEALs? That's correct. Lady, I've been guarding this gate for 8 years. I know every SEAL who walks through here. I know their faces, their ranks, their reputations. And I'm telling you right now, there is no way you're one of them. Why? Amara asked again, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Why is there no way? Thornton's silence was answer enough. Mitchell filled it instead. Because SEALs are the best of the best. They're warriors, elite operators. They're not— He caught himself, but the sentence hung unfinished, its implications clear. Not what? Amara pressed. Not black? Not women? Say what you mean. Not civilians showing up in workout clothes with fake IDs trying to get onto a secure military base, Thornton snapped, recovering his authority. Cooper, call the MPs. Mitchell, if she moves, you're authorized to detain. This is ridiculous, Amara said, her calm finally cracking. I'm a commissioned officer in the United States Navy. I have legitimate orders. If you would just— What you have, Thornton interrupted, stepping so close she could smell the coffee on his breath, is about 30 seconds before military police arrive to arrest you for attempted unauthorized access to a federal installation, possession of fraudulent government identification, and impersonating a military officer. That's looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down right there. He pointed to the curb. You're going to put your hands on your head, and you're going to wait quietly while we process you. I'm not sitting anywhere, Amara said, her voice hardening. I'm calling my command. She reached for her phone. Thornton's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, his grip painful, his fingers digging into muscle and tendon with the practiced force of someone who'd restrained people before. You're not calling anyone. You're following my orders, or this gets a lot worse for you. Take your hand off me, Amara said, her voice dropping to the command tone that had sent SEAL teams into combat zones. That's an order. Thornton's face twisted with rage and something uglier, the fury of a man whose authority was being challenged by someone he fundamentally believed had no right to challenge him. You don't give me orders. You're not military. You're a civilian with a fake ID and an attitude problem. And now you're resisting security personnel. He twisted her arm behind her back. Amara's training could have broken his grip in 3 different ways, could have put him on the ground in under 2 seconds. but she was on a military base surrounded by armed guards, and any physical resistance would be twisted into evidence of guilt. So she let him force her arm up between her shoulder blades, let him ignore her sharp intake of breath as the angle pushed past comfort into real pain. "Mitchell, cuffs," Thornton ordered. The younger guard fumbled with his duty belt, producing zip-tie restraints. They circled behind her, and Amara felt the plastic bite into her wrists, tightening until circulation slowed, until her fingers started to tingle. "This is assault on a superior officer," Amara said through gritted teeth. "When my command finds out—" "Your command?" Cooper laughed. "Lady, the only command you're going to see is a judge commanding you to serve your sentence. You really thought you could just walk onto a SEAL base pretending to be an officer? What were you planning to do? Take pictures of secure facilities? Steal classified information?" "I bet she's got a record," Mitchell added, pulling out his phone again. "These types usually do. Probably thought a military ID would get her out of trouble if local cops ran her name." "These types," Amara repeated, her voice shaking now with anger she couldn't fully contain. "You want to be specific about what type you think I am?" Thornton grabbed her shoulder, spinning her to face the guardhouse. "The type who doesn't follow rules. The type who thinks they're special. The type who—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Amara had heard variations of it her entire career. The type who didn't belong, the type who should know their place, the type whose skin color and gender meant that every achievement would be questioned, every credential doubted, every moment of authority treated as suspicious. "Walk," Thornton commanded, shoving her toward the guardhouse with enough force that she stumbled. The zip ties cut deeper into her wrists. Her shoulder throbbed where he'd wrenched it. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation. Being manhandled by men who should have recognized her rank, who should have shown basic military courtesy, but who saw only what their prejudices told them to see. Inside the guardhouse, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A desk cluttered with paperwork, a bank of security monitors showing different angles of the gate, a weapons locker secured with a heavy padlock. Thornton pushed her into a metal chair, the kind designed to be uncomfortable, designed to make people feel small. "Here's what's going to happen," Thornton said, leaning against the desk with his arms crossed, his posture radiating smug satisfaction. "The MPs are going to arrive. They're going to transport you to the security office for processing. You'll be fingerprinted, photographed, and charged. Your fake ID will be entered as evidence, and then you'll be transferred to federal custody for prosecution. This is your one chance to make this easier on yourself. Tell us who made the ID. Tell us what you were really trying to do here." "I was trying to report to my duty station," Amara said, her voice steady despite everything. "I'm the incoming commanding officer of SEAL Team 3. My assumption of command ceremony is tomorrow at 1400 hours. Admiral Henderson is expecting me. If you would just call—" "SEAL Team Commander?" Thornton's laughter was cruel now, vicious. "You? Commanding SEALs?" He turned to his subordinates. "You hear this? She really thinks we're stupid enough to believe—" "A black woman," Cooper said slowly as if explaining something to a child, "is not going to be commanding Navy SEALs. That's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked. Whatever website told you that story, whatever fantasy you've been living in, this is reality. And in reality, people like you don't get to walk onto this base and pretend to be someone you're not." "People like me," Amara repeated flatly. "You mean black people. You mean women. Say it clearly. Tell me exactly what you think people like me are capable of achieving." The silence that followed was thick with implications. Mitchell looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting away. Cooper's jaw set in stubborn defiance. Thornton's face remained impassive, but his eyes held something cold and certain. The absolute conviction that he was right, that his assumptions were justified, that her very presence was an affront to the natural order of things. "I think people like you," Thornton finally said, his voice low and deliberate, "need to understand that actions have consequences. that you can't just forge government documents and expect to talk your way out of it. That respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, and you haven't earned a damn thing except a trip to federal lockup. A vehicle pulled up outside, an MP Humvee, its lights flashing. Through the guardhouse window, Amara could see 2 military police officers climbing out, adjusting their duty belts, preparing to take custody of a suspect. Her suspect. This was spiraling out of control with terrifying speed. "Final chance," Thornton said, straightening up as the MPs approached the door. "Admit this was a mistake. Tell us you found the ID somewhere, that you were just curious about the base. We can reduce the charges, make this easier on you." "I have nothing to admit," Amara said, meeting his eyes with the same steady command presence that had faced down insurgents in 3 different countries. "Except that, when this is over, when you realize exactly who I am and what you've done, your career will be finished. Not because I'll seek revenge. I won't need to. You'll have done it to yourself." "Is that a threat?" Thornton leaned in close, his face inches from hers. "Because threatening a federal security officer is another charge we can add to your list." The guardhouse door opened. The 2 MPs entered, their expressions professionally neutral. One was young, maybe 25, with the fresh-faced earnestness of someone who still believed in the system. The other was older, a staff sergeant with tired eyes who'd probably processed 1,000 suspects and had learned not to make assumptions too quickly. "Master-at-Arms Thornton," the staff sergeant said, nodding respectfully. "You called about an unauthorized access attempt?" "Worse than that, Staff Sergeant Rivers," Thornton said, gesturing toward Amara like she was evidence at trial. "We've got fraudulent military identification, impersonation of an officer, and attempted infiltration of a secure facility. She claims to be a Navy commander assigned to SEAL Team 3. Rivers' eyebrows rose slightly. He looked at Amara. Really looked at her, taking in her bearing, her posture, the way she sat in that uncomfortable chair with her spine straight and her chin up despite the zip ties cutting into her wrists. "Ma'am," Rivers said carefully, "what's your name?" "Commander Amara Washington," she said clearly. "Service number 879-543381. I'm assigned to Naval Special Warfare Group 1, SEAL Team 3. My orders are in my phone, which Master-at-Arms Thornton has confiscated. I'm scheduled to assume command tomorrow afternoon." Something flickered across Rivers' face, doubt, maybe, or recognition. His partner, the younger MP, had pulled out a tablet and was typing rapidly. "Sir," the young MP said to Rivers, his voice uncertain, "I'm showing a Commander A. Washington with orders to Na B. Coronado, effective this week, assigned to Ness Dollars Group 1. Thornton snatched the tablet from the young man's hands. His face went pale as he read the screen, then red, then pale again. This has to be a mistake, a coincidence. There's no way—" "Scan her ID," Rivers said quietly, and there was something in his voice now. A careful distance, the tone of someone who'd just realized they might be watching a career-ending disaster unfold. "I already looked at it. It's fake," Thornton insisted, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Scan it anyway," Rivers said, and this time it wasn't a suggestion. Cooper pulled out the ID scanner, the device that should have been used 20 minutes ago, the simple tool that would have prevented this entire catastrophe. He swiped Amara's ID through the reader. The device beeped. Green light. Authentic Department of Defense credentials. Commander 05 United States Navy. Current clearance level, top secret, SCI. Current assignment, Naval Special Warfare. The guardhouse fell absolutely silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant crash of ocean waves. "Oh God," Mitchell whispered. Thornton stared at the scanner like it had betrayed him. His hands trembled slightly as he held the device. "This can't be right. The system must be—" "The system is fine," Rivers said, and now his voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "What's not fine is that you've restrained a superior officer without cause, confiscated her property, subjected her to—" He looked at Amara's wrists, at the zip ties cutting into her skin, at the way she sat with her shoulder slightly hunched from the pain of Thornton's earlier twist. Jesus Christ, cut her loose, right now. But we thought, Cooper stammered. I don't care what you thought, Rivers snapped. Cut those restraints and step away from the commander. That's an order. Mitchell moved forward with a knife, his hands shaking so badly he could barely cut through the plastic. The moment the restraints released, blood rushed back into Amara's hands in a painful flood. Deep red marks circled both wrists where the zip ties had cut into skin. Her shoulder screamed when she rolled it forward, testing the damage. Ma'am, Rivers said, and his voice was gentle now, horrified. I am so sorry. We had no idea. We should have verified. This should never have happened. Amara stood slowly, reclaiming her space, her presence expanding to fill the small guardhouse with command authority that had been invisible to these men when she was in workout clothes but was now undeniable. She held out her hand. My phone and ID, Master-at-Arms. Thornton fumbled with both items, his face the color of ash. He couldn't meet her eyes as he placed them in her outstretched palm. Ma'am, if I can explain, he started. You'll have plenty of opportunity to explain, Amara said coldly, in writing, to the Admiral, and to NCIS. The word NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, landed like a bomb. Mitchell actually flinched. Cooper looked like he might be sick. Outside, another vehicle approached. A black SUV with naval insignia on the doors. It pulled to a stop with precision, and a man climbed out. He was in his 50s, black, with the weathered face and quiet confidence of someone who'd spent decades in naval special warfare. His uniform was crisp, his trident gleaming on his chest. Senior Chief Marcus Johnson, SEAL Team 3's senior enlisted advisor. He took one look through the guardhouse window, saw Commander Washington standing with marked wrists, saw 3 pale-faced gate guards, saw 2 MPs who looked ready to disappear into the floor, and his expression transformed from confusion to absolute fury. Senior Chief Johnson walked through that guardhouse door, came to attention, and rendered the sharpest salute Amara had seen in years. Commander Washington, he said, his voice carrying through the guardhouse and out to where early morning personnel were starting to arrive for the day shift. Senior Chief Johnson, SEAL Team 3, welcome to Coronado, ma'am. Thornton made a sound like all the air had left his lungs. Amara returned the salute. Senior Chief, excellent timing. Ma'am, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Johnson's eyes took in every detail, the wrist marks, the careful way she held her shoulder, the barely controlled rage in her own eyes. I'll be fine, Senior Chief. Though I think we need to have a conversation with the base commander about security protocols at this gate. Yes, ma'am. Johnson's jaw was so tight it looked carved from granite. He turned to face Thornton, and when he spoke, each word was a hammer strike. You put your hands on my commanding officer. You restrained her. You treated her like a criminal. And why? Because you couldn't believe that a black woman could be a Navy commander? Because you couldn't believe that someone who looks like her could command SEALs? We didn't know. Thornton tried. You didn't want to know, Johnson cut him off. You had her ID, you had scanners, you had protocols. But you decided that what you saw, her skin color, her gender, was more reliable than official government documentation. You decided that people like her don't get to be officers, don't get to command, don't belong here. More vehicles were arriving now. Word was spreading. Personnel were gathering at a careful distance, watching the scene unfold. Phones were out, recording. By tonight, this would be known across every naval installation in the Pacific Fleet. A Navy sedan pulled up, and a woman in khaki uniform with commander's insignia stepped out, moving fast. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Sterling, Base Operations Officer. She'd clearly been briefed en route because her face was already set in lines of professional horror. Commander Washington? She asked, approaching with visible caution. Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Commander Sterling, Base Ops. I've notified Admiral Henderson. He's requested your immediate presence in his office along with—" Her eyes cut to Thornton with barely disguised contempt. "Master-at-Arms Thornton and anyone else involved in this incident." "Understood," Amara said. She looked at Thornton, at Cooper, at Mitchell. Looked at men who'd been so certain of her inferiority that they'd ignored every piece of evidence to the contrary. "Master-at-Arms, you and your personnel will remain here until NCIS arrives to take your statements. You're confined to this facility. That's an order. Ma'am, please, if we could just—" Thornton's voice broke. "You had multiple chances to verify my identity," Amara said, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years of command. "You chose instead to assault me, restrain me, and treat me like a criminal. Why? Because you couldn't imagine that someone who looks like me could have earned the rank I wear. You saw my skin first and decided that was all you needed to know." She stepped closer to him, and despite her shorter height, despite the workout clothes, despite everything he'd put her through, Thornton physically recoiled. "I've served this country for 15 years, Amara continued. "I've led SEALs in combat. I've been awarded the Silver Star for valor under fire. I've earned every rank, every ribbon, every bit of authority I hold. And none of that mattered to you, did it? Because you'd already decided what I was capable of based on what I looked like." "We were just doing our job," Cooper said weakly. "Your job," Amara said, turning to face him, "is to verify credentials and grant access to authorized personnel. Your job is not to racially profile visitors. Your job is not to assault people who don't fit your narrow definition of what a military officer looks like. You failed at your job. And now you'll face the consequences." An NCIS sedan arrived, 2 agents stepping out with badges visible. They approached Senior Chief Johnson first, speaking in low voices, taking notes. One of them photographed Amara's wrists. The other began interviewing the 2 MPs, whose relief at not being the focus of the investigation was visible. Admiral Henderson's car pulled up and the base commanding officer emerged, a man in his late 50s with admiral's stars gleaming on his collar and an expression of absolute fury on his face. Everyone came to attention. "Commander Washington," he said, and his voice was tight with controlled rage that clearly wasn't directed at her. "On behalf of this command, I offer my most sincere apologies for this unconscionable treatment. This is not how we treat officers. This is not how we treat anyone." "Thank you, Admiral," Amara said, her military bearing perfect despite everything. Henderson turned to Thornton. "Master-at-Arms, you're relieved of duty effective immediately. You'll surrender your credentials and weapon to NCIS. You're restricted to base pending investigation and court-martial proceedings." "Sir, if I could just explain—" Thornton tried. "Explain." Henderson's voice could have frozen the Pacific. "Explain how you physically assaulted a superior officer. Explain how you ignored verification protocols. Explain how you allowed your personal prejudices to compromise the security and integrity of this installation." He stepped closer to Thornton. "I've reviewed your record, Master-at-Arms. 16 complaints of excessive force over the past 3 years, 14 of those complaints filed by minorities, and somehow none of those complaints resulted in action. That ends today." Admiral Henderson's office occupied the top floor of the headquarters building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. Amara sat across from his desk while a Navy corpsman documented her injuries. Deep red marks circling both wrists, bruising on her right shoulder where Thornton had wrenched her arm, swelling where the zip ties had cut circulation. "Ma'am, I'm recommending orthopedics for the shoulder," the corpsman said quietly. "That kind of rotator strain can cause long-term damage. The way your arm was twisted. This is consistent with aggressive compliance techniques we're specifically trained not to use on cooperative subjects." After he left, Henderson poured water, his expression dark with suppressed rage. 15 years you've served, Bud S. graduate, multiple combat deployments, Silver Star, Purple Heart, And you were treated like a criminal at my gate because of the color of your skin. It's not the first time, Admiral, Amara said quietly. It won't be the last. That's unacceptable. Henderson pulled up files on his computer. NCIS just sent preliminary findings. Thornton has been gate commander for 8 years. Black and Latino personnel face random secondary screenings at 3 times the rate of white personnel. 17 documented incidents of excessive force over 36 months, all involving minorities. And somehow, none of this triggered investigation or disciplinary action. Amara thought about that look Thornton had given her, the instant calculation, the automatic assumption of threat. She'd seen it 1,000 times in 15 years. In briefing rooms where senior officers addressed questions to her male subordinates despite her being the ranking officer. In airports where TSA selected her with clockwork regularity. The exhaustion of constantly proving she belonged. Permission to speak freely? Amara asked. Granted. And it's Lawrence when we're alone. Lawrence, what happened this morning isn't about one racist guard. It's about a system that allows men like Thornton to thrive while complaints get ignored. Court-martialing him sends a message but doesn't fix the underlying problem. What would fix it? Accountability at every level. Training that actually changes behavior. Promotion boards that question why someone has 16 excessive force complaints. Command climate assessments that listen to minorities. She paused. And representation. When I'm the only black woman most sailors have seen at 05 level, their assumptions are never challenged. Henderson nodded. That's why your assignment matters. You're breaking a barrier that should have been broken decades ago. I didn't join to be a symbol. I joined to serve. You'll do both whether you want to or not. That's the burden of being first. Captain Jennifer Hayes entered with a tablet. Admiral, Commander, NCIS compiled security footage. You need to see this. The video was damning. Multiple camera angles showing Thornton spotting Amara 75 feet away, immediately signaling Cooper and Mitchell before she'd spoken a word. His sneer as he examined her legitimate ID. The violent assault, her face slammed into the wall, blood from her split lip, zip ties cutting into her wrists until her hands discolored. Hayes advanced to footage from 2 weeks prior. A black lieutenant commander in dress whites subjected to a 47-minute vehicle search while white officers passed through adjacent lanes with simple ID checks. A Latino Navy captain detained for 20 minutes while Thornton verified credentials that were obviously legitimate. How many incidents? Henderson demanded. 47 documented in 18 months, Hayes said. NCIS estimates actual numbers are 3 to 4 times higher because most don't report. They were right not to expect justice, Amara said bitterly. Complaints were filed and dismissed, every single one. Commander Rachel Morrison from JAG entered with legal files. Admiral, Commander Washington, I've completed charging documents. Master-at-Arms Thornton faces 8 charges under UCMJ. She outlined them systematically. Article 90, Assault on Superior Officer. Article 92, Failure to Obey Regulations. Article 93, Cruelty and Maltreatment. Article 117, Provoking Speeches Using Racial Language. Article 128, Assault. Article 133, Conduct Unbecoming. 2 counts. Article 134, Prejudice to Good Order and Wrongful Restraint. Recommended sentence? Henderson asked. Maximum. 15 years confinement, reduction to E1, forfeiture of all pay including pension, dishonorable discharge, his career completely destroyed. Good, and the others? Cooper and Mitchell face 6 charges each, 5 to 7 years, reduction to E1, bad conduct discharges minimum. Morrison turned to Amara. Commander, I need you to understand what court-martial involves. Public proceedings, probably broadcast. Defense will attack your credibility, suggest you provoked this, question how you graduated but imply standards were lowered, examine every negative evaluation you've ever received. They'll make you relive this incident in excruciating detail and twist every decision into poor judgment. Let them try, Amara said. I have 15 years of exemplary records. Silver Star, combat valor, security footage proving I identified myself clearly and was assaulted anyway. And 17 other victims willing to testify about Thornton's pattern. Article 32 hearing in 2 weeks, Morrison said. Full court-martial within 60 to 90 days. I'm requesting expedited schedule. After Morrison left, Henderson studied Amara carefully. Tell me about the 15 years that brought you here. Because tomorrow, everyone watches you take command. Amara took a breath. I grew up in Detroit, East Side. My father was a mechanic, my mother cleaned houses. Neither finished high school, but both were brilliant. They were underestimated their entire lives. People saw my father's greasy hands and my mother's cleaning supplies and made assumptions about their intelligence and worth. When I told them I wanted to join the Navy, my mother cried for 3 days. Not because she didn't support me, she was proud. She cried because she knew exactly what I'd face, that America would see my skin before my uniform, that I'd have to be twice as good to be considered half as competent. But you joined anyway. I joined because she taught me that being underestimated was power, that proving people wrong became its own victory. So I joined at 18, scored top 2% on ASVAB and decided I wanted to be a SEAL. You went for Bud S? After 2 years as hospital corpsman, building conditioning and preparing, got accepted into the second class allowing women. 18 women started, 3 finished. You finished 5th overall, Henderson noted. 5th out of 42 graduates, first among women. But that wasn't enough. My first platoon commander, Lieutenant Commander Harrison, told me I was a social experiment and assigned me to intelligence analysis, kept me on base during our Iraq deployment while men went on combat missions. How did you change his mind? Our FOB came under attack, 30 ISIS fighters, RPGs, and machine guns. I grabbed my rifle, ran outside, killed a gunner pinning down 2 Marines, then dragged a wounded Marine to safety under fire. After that, Harrison couldn't justify benching me anymore, though he never apologized. Afghanistan was where you earned the Silver Star, Hayes said. Helmand, 2016, village clearance turned into L-shaped ambush. Our lieutenant took shrapnel to the chest, killed instantly. Command fell to me as senior petty officer. 12 SEALs pinned down, 2 wounded, enemy on 3 sides, air support 20 minutes out. Amara's hands clenched. I took 4 volunteers, flanked through a pomegranate orchard, hit their machine gun nest with grenades, seized the position and turned their weapon on them. Stayed on that gun for 12 minutes, suppressing Taliban while my team evacuated wounded. Got hit, bullet fragment in my thigh, but kept firing until extraction arrived. 17 hours of surgery, Henderson read. They almost amputated. Told me I'd never run again. I told them to fix what they could. 8 months of hell rehabbing. Everyone said accept limitations, transition to admin role, that I'd done enough. I returned to full SEAL duty, passed every qualification, deployed to Syria and Yemen. Then the Pentagon. 3 years redesigning training protocols. I analyzed 15 years of combat operations, interviewed hundreds of operators, identified what actually keeps people alive versus artificial difficulty, improved graduation rates 14% while raising certain standards. My protocols are used across all special operations commands now. Admiral Chen called you the finest strategic mind of a generation, Henderson said. He recommended you for this command personally. And this morning, a gate guard decided my credentials were fake because of my skin color, Amara said. 15 years of excellence didn't matter. Tomorrow, Henderson said, you stand before this base and take command of SEAL Team 3. Everyone watching, some hoping you succeed, some waiting for you to fail. I can postpone if you need recovery time. No, Amara said immediately. Postponing sends a message that racism has power over me. We proceed as scheduled. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. This ceremony isn't just about you assuming leadership. It's a statement that excellence transcends prejudice. Senior Chief Marcus Johnson found her that evening in her temporary quarters, staring at tomorrow's uniform. The shoulder boards gleamed with 4 stripes. Rank earned through blood, authority Thornton had tried to strip away. "Permission to enter, ma'am?" "Granted. It's Amara when we're alone." "Amara." He sat across from her, his weathered face troubled. "I've been a SEAL for 20 years, served with hundreds of operators. You know what makes a great commander? Not just tactical skill or combat experience, though you have both in abundance. It's the ability to lead people who are watching for any sign of weakness, any excuse to doubt you. Tomorrow, every SEAL on Team 3 will be watching. Some skeptical, some resentful, some hoping you fail so they can confirm their biases about women in special operations, about diversity initiatives, about political correctness, supposedly lowering standards." "I know," Amara said quietly. "But here's what else I know. I read your after-action reports from Afghanistan. I studied your Pentagon training protocols. I talked to SEALs who served with you in Syria and Yemen, and every single one said the same thing. You're the best combat leader they've worked with. Calm under fire. Tactical genius. Never asks subordinates to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. That's who you are." "What happened this morning was criminal and racist and inexcusable," Johnson continued, "but it doesn't define you. Your 15 years of service define you. Your Silver Star defines you. The lives you've saved and the missions you've led, that's your definition. Thank you, Senior Chief. One more thing. The team knows what Thornton did. We're furious, not just because you're our incoming CO, but because you're one of us. You earned the trident. You bled for the teams. Anyone who treats you as less than the warrior you are will answer to all of us." After he left, Amara allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She thought about her mother, who'd warned her this would happen, her father, who'd taught her that excellence was the only response to prejudice, the instructors at Bud S who'd watched her closer, judged her harder, waiting for her to fail. She thought about Lieutenant Harrison keeping her off missions until violence forced his hand, the Taliban fighters she'd killed to save her team, the 8 months of agonizing rehab when everyone told her to quit, the 15 years of proving herself over and over to people who would never be satisfied. And she thought about tomorrow, standing before hundreds of SEALs, taking command of Team 3, knowing that Thornton and men like him watched from wherever they kept prisoners awaiting court-martial, knowing that her success would infuriate them more than any punishment a judge could impose. She dried her tears, pulled out her dress-white uniform, and began mentally preparing. Not for the ceremony, she'd led ceremonies before, but for the weight of being first. The burden of knowing that every decision, every order, every success and failure would be magnified and generalized to every woman and person of color who came after. Tomorrow she would take command, and she would prove, once again, that she belonged there. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in justice. Drop a like if accountability matters. Comment below, should Thornton get the maximum 15 years? Because what happens in that courtroom will show whether the Navy truly values all its officers equally. The morning sun rose over Coronado Island with the kind of crystalline clarity that made California famous. At 800 hours, the parade ground of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado filled with personnel, hundreds of sailors in dress whites and khakis, SEAL operators in their tan uniforms with tridents gleaming on their chests, officers from across the Pacific Fleet who'd flown in specifically for this ceremony. Commander Amara Washington stood in her temporary quarters, buttoning her dress-white uniform with careful precision, despite the lingering pain in her shoulder. The mirror reflected a warrior, 4 gold stripes on her shoulder boards, ribbons spanning her chest with the Silver Star prominent among them, the SEAL trident over her left breast pocket. This was who she was. Not the woman Thornton had seen in workout clothes, not the suspect he'd restrained and bloodied, but a decorated combat veteran, a strategic genius, a leader who'd earned every rank through excellence and sacrifice. Senior Chief Johnson knocked and entered. "Ma'am, the base is assembled. Admiral Henderson requests your presence in 5 minutes." "I'm ready, Senior Chief." They walked together across the base, past buildings where sailors stopped and saluted, past the Bud S training compound where a new class of candidates watched with undisguised curiosity. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew what had happened at the gate yesterday morning. Everyone had seen the security footage that had somehow leaked to social media and gone viral overnight. Millions of views, thousands of comments ranging from outraged support to racist dismissals. The parade ground was perfectly organized. SEAL Team 3 stood in formation at the center. 48 operators, the finest warriors America produced. Behind them, hundreds of base personnel filled the stands. Media cameras lined the perimeter. This wasn't just a change of command ceremony anymore. It was a statement about who belonged in positions of authority and who didn't. Admiral Henderson stood at the podium, his expression grave but determined. Captain Hayes held the unit colors. The outgoing commander, Commander Robert Mitchell, no relation to the gate guard, waited to transfer authority. As Amara approached, the entire assembly came to attention with parade ground precision. Hundreds of hands snapped into salutes. The SEAL operators held their bearing perfectly, but she could see the assessment in their eyes. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Their expressions broadcasting that they believed a black woman commanding SEALs was political correctness gone wrong. She'd faced these looks before. At Bud S, where instructors waited for her to ring the bell and quit. In Iraq, where her platoon commander assigned her to desk work rather than combat. In Afghanistan, where Taliban fighters had underestimated the woman leading the counter-assault until her bullets proved them fatally wrong. Henderson stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered for the change of command ceremony of SEAL Team 3. But before we proceed, I must address the incident that occurred at this base's main gate yesterday morning." The parade ground fell absolutely silent. Commander Amara Washington, the officer you see before you, was physically assaulted, restrained with zip ties, and treated like a criminal by gate security personnel. Why? Because Master-at-Arms Thornton and his subordinates looked at her skin color and civilian clothing and decided, without verifying her credentials, without following proper protocols, that she couldn't possibly be a Navy commander assigned to this base. Henderson's voice hardened. This was not a mistake. This was not overzealous security. This was racial profiling. This was assault on a superior officer. This was a symptom of systemic racism that has been allowed to fester at this installation for years while complaints were ignored and victims were silenced. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some uncomfortable shifting, some nodding in grim recognition. Master-at-Arms Thornton, along with Petty Officers Cooper and Mitchell, are currently confined awaiting court-martial on multiple charges, including assault on a superior officer, conduct unbecoming, and civil rights violations. If convicted, and the evidence is overwhelming, they will face years in military prison, dishonorable discharges, and complete forfeiture of benefits. Their careers are finished, their reputations destroyed, as they should be. Henderson paused, letting that sink in. But punishing 3 racist gate guards doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't address the culture that allowed their behavior to continue for years. It doesn't undo the damage to the 47 other minority personnel they targeted. And it doesn't erase the message they sent, that people who look like Commander Washington don't belong here. He turned to face Amara directly. So let me be absolutely clear to everyone on this base and everyone watching around the world. Commander Washington belongs here. She earned her place through 15 years of exemplary service, through graduating Bud S in the top 5 of her class, through leading SEALs in combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Yemen, through earning the Silver Star for valor under fire when she led a counter-assault that saved her entire team, through suffering a near-fatal combat wound and fighting through 8 months of rehabilitation to return to full SEAL duty, through redesigning special operations training protocols that have improved the effectiveness of every SEAL team in the Navy. Henderson's voice rose with passion. She belongs here not because of diversity initiatives or political correctness or lowered standards. She belongs here because she is one of the finest combat leaders this country has produced. And anyone who questions her qualifications based on her skin color or gender can schedule an appointment with me to discuss their own continued employment in the United States Navy. The SEAL operators stood motionless, but Amara could see the message landing. Some faces showed respect, recognition that Henderson was drawing a line that couldn't be crossed. Others showed resentment that would probably never fully disappear. That was fine. She didn't need them to like her. She needed them to follow her orders and trust her judgment. Respect could be earned through competence. Now, Henderson said, his tone shifting to formal ceremony, we proceed with the change of command. Commander Mitchell, you have led this team with distinction for 30 months. The Navy thanks you for your service to SEAL Team 3. The ceremony followed traditional protocols. Commander Mitchell read his orders, detaching him from command. He spoke briefly about the honor of leading America's warriors, about the missions accomplished and the challenges overcome. Then he turned to Amara, saluted, and said quietly, loud enough for the front rows to hear, "They're the best operators in the Navy, Commander. Lead them well." "I will," Amara promised. Admiral Henderson read Amara's orders aloud. Commander Amara J. Washington, United States Navy, is hereby assigned as Commanding Officer, SEAL Team 3, Naval Special Warfare Group 1, effective immediately. By order of the Chief of Naval Operations, with the approval of the Secretary of the Navy. Captain Hayes brought forward the unit colors, the flag representing SEAL Team 3's history, missions, and honor. Commander Mitchell held one side. Amara grasped the other. The symbolic transfer of authority, the moment when leadership passed from one officer to another. "I relieve you, sir," Amara said clearly. "I stand relieved," Mitchell replied. The flag transferred to Amara's hands. She was now the commanding officer. The responsibility for 48 SEAL operators, dozens of support personnel, millions of dollars in equipment, and classified missions that protected American lives, all of it now rested on her shoulders. She stepped to the microphone, the flag held firmly in her left hand. Every eye in the parade ground focused on her. This was the moment that mattered. Her first words as commander would set the tone for everything that followed. "Team 3, she began, her voice carrying across the parade ground with command authority earned through leading warriors in combat. "I stand before you not as a symbol or a statement or a diversity initiative. I stand before you as a SEAL operator who has earned the right to lead you through the same crucible you all endured. I know some of you are skeptical. You're looking at me wondering if I got this command because of my race or gender rather than my qualifications. Let me address that directly. I graduated Bud-S 5th in my class. I've deployed to 4 combat zones. I've led direct action missions, hostage rescues, and counterterrorism operations. I've been shot, nearly had my leg amputated, and returned to full operational status because I refused to let injury define my capabilities. I've planned special operations campaigns at the Pentagon level that are now doctrine across all SOF units." She paused, making eye contact with the operators in front of her. "My record speaks for itself. But I understand that you don't owe me respect based on credentials alone. You'll judge me by my decisions, my leadership, and whether I can bring you home alive from the missions we're assigned. That's appropriate. That's how it should be. Here's what I promise you. I will never ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. I will never compromise your safety for politics or public relations. I will never sacrifice mission effectiveness for personal advancement. And I will never tolerate racism, sexism, or any other form of discrimination in this command. We are SEALs. We are the best because we focus on capability, not appearance, on performance, not prejudice." Amara's voice hardened. "What happened to me yesterday morning at that gate was a disgrace. But it's also a reminder that excellence isn't always recognized by people who judge based on assumptions rather than evidence. Some of you may face similar situations, being underestimated, being judged by appearance, being denied opportunities because someone decided you don't fit their template of what a warrior should look like. When that happens, you respond with excellence. You prove them wrong not with words but with performance, and you remember that this team, your team, judges people by their capabilities, not their demographics. She raised the unit colors. SEAL Team 3 has a proud history of accomplishing impossible missions. That legacy continues today. I'm honored to command you. I'm ready to lead you, and I promise that together we will maintain the standard of excellence that this trident represents. The SEAL operators snapped into salutes. The gesture was sharp, professional, and, from most of them, genuinely respectful. She'd said what needed to be said. Now she had to prove it through action. After the ceremony, Senior Chief Johnson brought the team's leadership to the command office, platoon chiefs, senior operators, the intelligence officer, and logistics coordinator. They gathered around the conference table, their expressions ranging from cautiously optimistic to openly skeptical. "Let's address the elephant in the room," Amara said without preamble. "Some of you think I don't belong here. You think this command is political theater? You're wrong. But I can't change your mind with a speech, so instead I'll change it with results." She pulled up mission files on the screen. "We have tasking for a high-value target interdiction in 3 weeks. Enemy combatant leadership moving through a denied area. Difficult terrain, hostile population, significant risk." The previous command began mission planning but hadn't finalized approach vectors or extraction protocols. For the next 90 minutes, Amara walked them through tactical planning that demonstrated her mastery of special operations methodology. She identified vulnerabilities in the preliminary plan, proposed alternative approaches that reduced risk while increasing probability of success, and incorporated lessons learned from similar missions she'd planned at the Pentagon. The skepticism in the room gradually shifted to engagement. These were professionals who recognized expertise when they saw it. By the time the planning session ended, even the most hostile operators were nodding in agreement with her tactical decisions. "One more thing," Amara said as they prepared to leave. "Some of you will be called to testify at Thornton's court-martial. You'll be asked about command climate, about discrimination you've witnessed, about patterns of behavior at that gate. I want you to tell the truth, whatever that truth is. This isn't about protecting me or supporting a narrative. It's about accountability and justice." 2 weeks later, the Article 32 preliminary hearing convened in a military courtroom on base. Commander Morrison prosecuted with methodical precision, presenting security footage that showed the assault in horrifying detail, medical evidence documenting Amara's injuries, testimony from the 2 MPs who'd arrived to find a superior officer restrained and bloodied, statistical analysis showing the pattern of racial profiling at Thornton's gate. Thornton's defense attorney, a civilian lawyer who specialized in military cases, tried to argue that his client had followed security protocols, that Commander Washington's civilian clothing and approach on foot created reasonable suspicion that the force used was proportionate to perceived threat. The security footage destroyed every argument. The audio was damning. Thornton's voice clearly using racial language, making assumptions about criminality, refusing to verify credentials that would have resolved the situation in seconds. The investigating officer recommended court-martial on all charges. Trial was scheduled for 6 weeks later. During those 6 weeks, Amara focused on her team. She led training exercises that pushed operators to their limits. She refined tactical procedures based on after-action reviews. She worked 18-hour days proving through performance that she deserved the command she held. The team's skepticism gradually transformed into grudging respect. She outshot most of them on the range. She kept pace on 20-mile ruck marches despite her combat-damaged leg. She demonstrated tactical knowledge that came from real combat experience, not just classroom theory. Most importantly, she listened to her operators, incorporated their expertise into planning, and made decisions that prioritized their safety and mission success over personal ego. When the court-martial finally convened, media attention was intense. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all covering the trial of Navy personnel who'd assaulted a black female SEAL commander. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters, and sailors from across the fleet who wanted to see justice delivered. Commander Morrison prosecuted with devastating effectiveness. She played the security footage multiple times, forcing the jury of senior officers to watch Commander Washington being slammed into a wall, restrained with zip ties, treated like a criminal. She presented medical evidence of injuries. She called 17 other minority personnel who testified about Thornton's pattern of racial profiling and excessive force. When Amara took the stand, defense counsel tried to discredit her, asked why she'd approached the gate on foot, why she wore civilian clothes, whether she'd properly identified herself, whether she'd resisted in ways that justified the response. Amara answered each question with calm precision, her credibility unshakable. She explained that she'd wanted to tour the base privately before her official ceremony, that civilian clothes were appropriate for off-duty personnel, that she'd identified herself clearly and repeatedly, that she'd remained cooperative despite being assaulted. Commander Washington, defense counsel asked, "Isn't it true that you have a history of sensitivity to racial issues? That you've filed complaints in the past about alleged discrimination?" "I've filed 2 formal complaints in 15 years of service," Amara replied evenly. "Both were substantiated by investigation. Both resulted in corrective action. I don't see discrimination where none exists. I recognize it when it happens, because I've experienced it repeatedly throughout my career." "Isn't it possible that Master-at-Arms Thornton's actions were based on legitimate security concerns rather than racial bias?" "No," Amara said flatly. "The security footage shows he profiled me before I reached the gate. He refused to verify my credentials using available scanners. He used racial language, 'you people,' and made assumptions about criminality based on my appearance. This wasn't security protocol. This was racism." The defense had no effective counter. The evidence was overwhelming. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They returned with verdicts: guilty on all 8 charges for Thornton, guilty on 6 charges each for Cooper and Mitchell. The military judge delivered sentencing with harsh clarity. "Master-at-Arms Thornton, your actions represent a betrayal of the oath you swore to support and defend the Constitution. You assaulted a superior officer based on racial prejudice. You abused your authority. You brought dishonor to the United States Navy. You are sentenced to 12 years confinement at the United States Disciplinary Barracks, reduction to pay grade E1, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and dismissal from service with a dishonorable discharge. You will lose all benefits including pension. Your career is finished, and you will carry the shame of this conviction for the rest of your life." Cooper and Mitchell received 5 years each, similar reductions and bad conduct discharges. As MPs led Thornton from the courtroom in handcuffs, he looked at Amara with undisguised hatred. She met his eyes without flinching. She'd won not through revenge, but through justice. The system had worked. Slowly, imperfectly, but it had worked. 5 years later, Commander Amara Washington stood on the same parade ground where she'd assumed command, but now with Captain's Eagles on her collar. She'd been promoted early, her performance as SEAL Team 3 commander so exceptional that the promotion board unanimously recommended advancement. She'd led her team through successful missions in 3 countries, 0 combat casualties under her command, multiple high-value targets captured, operational effectiveness that exceeded every metric. But more than tactical success, she'd changed the culture. She'd mentored junior officers, women and minorities who saw her as proof that barriers could be broken. She'd pushed for policy changes in how the Navy recruited and retained diverse talent. She'd spoken at the Naval Academy, at Bud-S graduations, at Pentagon conferences about leadership and excellence. The Navy had made changes too. Gate security protocols now mandated immediate credential verification. Discrimination complaints were investigated by independent agencies rather than dismissed by chains of command that protected abusers. Diversity training was redesigned to focus on unconscious bias and its operational impacts rather than just checking boxes. Thornton was serving year 5 of his 12-year sentence at Fort Leavenworth. Reports said he spent his time in the prison library, isolated from other inmates who viewed his assault on a superior officer as dishonorable. His wife had divorced him, his adult children refused contact, his pension was gone, his reputation destroyed, his future bleak. He would be released eventually, but he would carry the dishonorable discharge and federal conviction for the rest of his life. Unemployable, dishonored, a cautionary tale about the cost of racism. Cooper and Mitchell had been released after serving most of their sentences. Both struggled to find employment with bad conduct discharges on their records. Both faced consequences that would follow them forever. Meanwhile, other changes rippled outward. The 17 minority personnel who'd testified about discrimination received formal apologies and compensation. Several officers in Thornton's chain of command who'd dismissed complaints were relieved of duty or denied promotion. Admiral Henderson implemented base-wide reforms that became models for other installations. And most importantly, 3 more women graduated BUD/S in the years after Amara's command. 2 were assigned to SEAL teams. 1 was Black, a young woman from Atlanta who wrote Amara a letter saying, "I knew it was possible because you proved it first. Thank you for opening the door." That letter sat framed on Amara's desk now. A reminder that being first meant carrying a burden, but it also meant creating opportunities for everyone who came after. On this anniversary of her original change of command, Amara addressed a new class of BUD/S candidates, diverse faces representing America's full spectrum, women and men. Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. All of them facing the same impossible standards, all of them being judged by their performance rather than their appearance. 5 years ago, Amara told them, "I was assaulted at the gate of this base by security personnel who couldn't believe a Black woman could be a Navy commander. They saw my skin color and civilian clothes and decided I was a threat, a criminal, someone who didn't belong. They were wrong." Some of you will face similar moments, times when people underestimate you, judge you by appearance, deny you opportunities because you don't fit their narrow definition of what a warrior should look like. When that happens, remember this. Excellence is the best response to prejudice. Performance is the best answer to discrimination. And justice, real justice, comes not from revenge, but from accountability. Master-at-Arms Thornton is serving 12 years in prison. His accomplices are dishonored and unemployable. The system that protected them for years has been reformed. Change is slow, but it happens when good people refuse to accept injustice. She looked across the eager faces before her. You're the future of naval special warfare. Some of you will fail BUD/S, most of you, statistically. But those who succeed will do so because you proved your capability through the hardest training in the military. And when you earn that trident, wear it with pride. You'll have earned the right to call yourself a SEAL through the same standard that's been applied for generations. Excellence, performance, capability. Go make history. And remember, barriers exist to be broken. What's your view about this story? If you were in Commander Washington's position, would you have had the grace to focus on justice rather than revenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that justice is real, hit that subscribe button for more true stories of accountability and courage. Smash the like button if you believe racists should face consequences. Share this story with someone who needs to see that discrimination has a price. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. Remember, excellence transcends prejudice. Performance defeats discrimination. And justice, when pursued with integrity, transforms not just individuals, but entire systems. Judgment is blind, but justice sees everything.